Welcome to Topline, the podcast for the best founders, operators, and investors in B2B tech. Every week, AJ Bruno, Asad Zaman, and me, Sam Jacobs, will break down what's important for you to know to be the most well-informed professionals in the market.
This episode is brought to you by Attio, the AI-native CRM built for the next era of companies. Connect your email, and Attio instantly builds your CRM right before your eyes with every company, every contact, and every interaction you've ever had, enriched and organized. With Attio, you can build AI-powered automations and use its research agents to tackle complex operational processes like finding key decision makers and triaging incoming leads. Join industry leaders like Flatfile, Replicate, Modal, and more. Just head to attio.com/topline and you'll get 15% off your first year. That's attio.com/topline for 15% off your first year. Now back to the show.
Hey everybody, Sam Jacobs here. It's Topline 103, that special 103rd episode. And every 103rd episode of Topline, we bring Ben Kus on to the show. He's the Chief Technology Officer at Box. Ben is responsible for developing the vision and strategy for technology and AI at Box, driving innovation across product and engineering, and ensuring that resources are aligned with the company's business needs. Previously, he was VP of Product Management. Before that, he was co-founder and CTO of Subspace, an enterprise security solution that was acquired by Box. He's held various leadership positions, including the role of Chief Architect for IBM, I believe in charge of mobility, if I'm not mistaken. Senior Director of Technology for Big Fix, which I believe IBM acquired. He studied CS at the University of Cal Berkeley. Ben, welcome to Topline. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on.
I have a quick question, which won't require any kind of hot take. How do I pronounce your last name? Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, you got it. My family would say it rhymes with octopus.
Oh, there we go. All right. Well, my initial guess was good. Well, today I'm joined, as always, by AJ Bruno, the CEO of QuotaPath, Asad Zaman, the CEO of Sales Talent Agency. Gentlemen, how are you doing?
Living the life, Sam. Living the life. I'm rested. I slept 13 hours on Saturday and 9 hours on Sunday. This is the most slept I have.
What were you doing Friday that you had to sleep 13 hours on Saturday?
I don't know. I was just burnt out. I wasn't burnt out. I want to be careful about using that word. I was just really tired. I'd worked really hard for a couple of months, and it was the moment to sleep. And so I'm very happy now.
We like the rested Asad, but we also like the unrested Asad.
He's got an edge to him.
Yeah. I'm doing all right. I'm doing okay, Sam. Why do quarters have to end on Mondays? Who does that? It was so annoying. So we had our last deal come in at 10:30 last night, which
that's normally a good thing if it's the deal that puts you over the threshold.
It wasn't the deal that put us over the threshold, Sam. Spoiler alert, we missed our first quarter in 6 quarters.
AJ, relax. You hit 6 quarters at the worst time to hit 6 quarters.
Do you even know me, Asad? Do I seem like a chill dude?
Ben, Asad is normally our moderator, so we'll hand it over to him. He's prepared a lot of deep and insightful questions about the future of artificial intelligence.
He sent you the 15-page memo yesterday. Did you read it?
I wrote that entirely myself. There was no AI in there. Like, I find it important to write these questions myself. Ben, I've been looking forward to the conversation, and your background is just fascinating. You took over the CTO role at Bots after being the VP of product for a couple of years. You took over the CTO role in 2020 March. I became CEO a few months later. And one of the experiences I remember is usually when you take on a new role of any sort, but especially a role of the sort that you took on or I took on a few months after you did, you have to have a game plan. This is what I'm going to do. This is how we're going to take over the world now. And that was really hard in that moment because of COVID. But then you had ZIRP, and then you had inflation, and the market crashed, and then AI came forward. And I'm just curious to get your reflection on your time as a CTO. You've been a CTO during a lot of volatility. There's a lot of change that's happened. Some of that volatility was annoying, right? Market downturns aren't fun and exciting, but then there's also AI that has changed the landscape completely and has a really meaningful shift for bots specifically. So curious, your reflections on the experience, but also how this shift with AI, the ChatGPT moment, how has this changed how all of you are thinking about bots?
Yeah, no. So yeah, it has been a crazy few years when you kind of look back. It almost seems like much longer than the 5 years there. So we had an interesting run at Box. So we have been around for a while at Box. We have 120,000 enterprise customers, and one of the things that, because we started a while ago, we had lived only in data centers to start with, just like most companies at the time. And so one of the big shifts we did around 2020, which was sort of timely, was we had transitioned away from data centers and fully into the public clouds and the hyperscalers like GCP, AWS, Azure, and others. And so that was a big dominant sort of thing that had happened in one of my main projects as CTO, to make sure that this kind of end-to-end thing happens, which is really disruptive for company in general. And we had significant infrastructure, so that was a big project. But interestingly, we're really happy we did it for a number of reasons, but also because then, as you mentioned, in the world of generative AI comes along, typically not a lot of companies have a bunch of GPUs sitting in their data centers. And so you almost have to be a cloud first company if you're going to be using the latest of AI. So that was very fortunate for many reasons that we were in that spot to then, when this kind of gift came along from generative AI. So, and I call it a gift of any company that has significant data like Box, we store an awful lot of our enterprise's data. Companies, when they look at AI, they say this could be very useful on my data. I want to take the benefits of generative AI and apply it to the things I have. And in particular, Box, we're an unstructured content company, and this is where AI is very good. Not only does it generate, but it also understands stuff very well, and then turns around and can kind of help you, almost like a professional assistant. And so then that was a gift for us as a company. We'd been working with AI, and we didn't even use AI at the time. We'd call it ML for a long time because that was sort of the nature of the state-of-the-art technology. But then as generative AI comes out, it then helps us to open up this huge world of new possibilities. And it's interesting to look at we've gone from this kind of heads down, solve for operational efficiency, solve for making sure that we kept our technology foundation solid and so on, to then solving for a crazy new, a marathon at sprint speed kind of world of AI going forward.
That's really, it's very cool to hear that. And what an interesting moment where you guys transitioned to the cloud right before by chance.
Ben, when you say transition to the cloud, just so it's for our audience, you said data centers, but that's not on-prem, right? That was you were hosting your own data centers, and then you all moved to okay.
Yeah, so we had 10 years ago, I'm not sure how everybody remembers the time, but it was not common to just host everything in AWS or GCP. Even to the point a long time ago, we were a very enterprise focused company, large enterprises, and some of them a long time ago were I don't want that. I don't want you to put my data somewhere else. It's got this third party, fourth party risk kind of challenges. Now today, every single enterprise uses a big hyperscaler, so they have long since got over that. But companies that were around for a while had to transition into this world of not having to maintain physical infrastructure. For a long time at Box and other companies, we had a process. Somebody takes the server out of the box and sticks it in the rack, and you had to worry about things like getting a new data center if you get full and that kind of stuff. And so those days are gone, as we had 100% transition now to.
I'm actually surprised to hear that, because I feel like Box was born post cloud hyperscaling situation, so there had to be an intentional choice that happened.
Yeah, we definitely, I think, were one of the first to use the public cloud from an enterprise perspective. So Box was founded quite a while ago, right? I believe 2005, 20 years, I think, is when, depending on when you look at the date that Aaron's and Dylan and team started the company. But for a long time we started to use it, but then not fully. And so the fully part is where everything changes.
When it comes to the public cloud, one of the things that always is interesting to read is how there's so many workloads even today that are not on the public cloud. And for reasons like security, some banks don't want to put certain things in the cloud. And sometimes it's just because people like to do things the way they've always done them and they don't like change.
Yeah.
Have you noticed this shift with AI recently being an accelerant for those laggards transitioning to the cloud because they're realizing that, oh, AI is really powerful. I might not have wanted this, and that, but I need AI.
Yeah.
And for me to be able to get the juice out of AI, I need to be on the cloud. Like, have you noticed any type of acceleration there?
Yeah, I think almost all enterprises are going through this like moment of thinking about their core platforms, and they're thinking like, what should I do if I want a future of AI? Like, because like still today, like even a lot of enterprises, even ones who have adopted some future oriented, like nice foundational platforms, they still have stuff that's legacy, right? And so like some of them have like rooms in their buildings that are full of servers, and to the point like for a long time they've known like, oh, I wish it was more mobile friendly, or I wish it was more cloud friendly, I wish it was more browser friendly, like that kind of thing. So like legacy systems can still dominate a lot of industries. But then when they're looking at AI, there's just almost no hope of them to say, oh, I know, I'm going to then again rack and stack a bunch of GPUs. It's not really practical. I mean, even if you could, you probably want actually that like it's increasing so quickly, like your ability as an enterprise to handle this rapid acceleration from a hardware perspective just is probably not going to happen. So what we see is that everybody's fundamentally rethinking some of their legacy platforms to say, can it support the future of not only what I can do now, but what I might want to do going forward, in particular on their like data stacks. Like if your data is not accessible to AI from the things you care about the most, then you have a challenge of not being able to utilize the benefits that everybody's hoping and expecting for.
So interesting. Sam, question for you. We had Benedict Evans on a few months ago, and he was talking about cloud transition. He's like, listen, guys, like still most of workloads are not on the cloud. Things move slower than what people hope. The implementation of AI and AI becoming mainstream isn't just about the technology being ready. It's about human beings adopting it. It's about the change management that needs to happen to be able to adopt it well. And those things are slow. But it does seem to be moving a bit faster than previous platform shifts as well. Like it's not moving at the pace of cloud, right? Like I sat down with some people at large enterprises recently, and they were talking about AI agents the way we all talk about AI agents. And so why do you think things are moving this much faster this time around?
Well, I'll be curious on Ben's perspective on this, but my take on it is because of the platform shifts that we've seen over the last 20, 25 years, and the reality that I think enterprises feel like at different times they were a little slow moving. And I don't think we've seen such large adoption from the hyperscalers and the super large enterprises. I mean, obviously, we've got the best funded company in the world, OpenAI, that's driving a lot of this. It itself, I guess, is an enterprise business on its own now. But yeah, I think there's this fear of missing out on a pivotal transformation that's happening. My question to Ben is, I mean, I think we're seeing a lot of these shifts, but I also think enterprises aren't still sure what the guardrails should be. And so what I'm hearing from our go-to-market, peers and professionals is a lot of deals, for example, in Q1 were pushed partially because of, macroeconomic uncertainty and volatility, but also because enterprises aren't sure what to even ask for when it comes to data privacy, when it comes to security. And there's these contracts that are being written around how are you going to use AI, and people aren't even sure what they should be asking for. Sometimes what they're asking for is not even possible or assumes a certain set of assumptions that don't even make sense. What's your perspective on how enterprises are navigating this transition? To Asad's point, it does feel like it's happening more quickly than other platform shifts that we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I think there's an interesting sort of dynamic when you look at the history is like, if you think back to the really big trends, like, the internet, moving things to SaaS, moving things to mobile, like an interesting thing is that many of those like kind of took a long time to unfold. Like I think we kind of sometimes forget looking back, but there was a long time in mobile where, we had Palm Pilots, and then we had like Blackberries, and then we had like all, and then the early iPhones came out and Android, and you're like, are these good or not? Like, and so that that took place over time, and it gave companies a long time to think about it and to sort of plan and to make progress. And then some decided not to, some decided to wait until it matured. But like, I think that one of the shocks of the generative AI world is how quickly they went from nobody had any clue about what was possible to, and actually even to the technology itself was like, very quickly became good. And then so it was like that ChatGPT moment, which I think is a fair thing to say. It was kind of a moment in November. And then boom, like suddenly you're like, wow, I did not know, very few people in the world knew that this was possible. And that's really, I think, the difference in this trend versus these other major shifts is that everybody became aware very quickly and they could try it. It's like, you just log in and it was available to you. Like, and then everybody said, wow, this is kind of amazing. And so then for enterprises, it became something where everybody recognized that this very disruptive technology has a lot of potential. And then everybody needed to sit down and then say, what's my AI strategy? Like there's no company in the world, I think right now, that's an enterprise company who says, I haven't really thought about AI. It's not really my thing. Like they all have thought through this thing. Whereas before, it's kind of like, I'm not so sure why that early mobile device or I don't need the internet, right? Like those kind of thought processes were very, like it took a while to evolve. Like where I think the shift was so square function that like suddenly everybody said like, oh, I got to do something about this. But then to the point you asked about it was like, suddenly everybody has to rethink a lot of things, like data security, some of these things that are so amazing and revolutionary move so fast. You're like, well, wait a minute, what about data security? What are they doing with my data? Like, can I trust them? Like some companies had like forgotten or like all of the details that go into like what made them want to trust a vendor versus another one. And then this cool new AI company comes out and you're like, well, wait a minute, I got to rethink a lot of what it means for my data to be secure, because you don't want AI to turn into one of the biggest data leakage events that you have as an organization if you overshare with these AI or they're not running in the right trusted hosted systems. So I think that is, everybody got interested, but then they all had to deal with all these kind of relative, like serious concerns, relatively scary, to then say it was time to adopt.
Box kind of sits at the epicenter of this though, right? So from a productization standpoint, so we're curious, Ben, both as a company, the policies that you all have set, that Aaron has said, okay, we're going to go do this. And then how has that transferred over to what you all are doing for your customers on a day-to-day basis and for specifically for AI and security?
Yeah. So like early on, and we, since we've been doing like variants of AI ML for a long time, we kind of had sort of set out these guidelines and these policies, which helped us with kind of the day that like everybody was very interested in AI. So we have published these AI principles, which were like sort of like, no matter what changes, these are our principles, and we're not going to train on your data. We're going to keep it very secure. At Box, one of our things we do is we hold the customer's data. They have to trust us, and then make sure that if our security is everything to us, because if customers can't trust their data, then they won't give it to us, and therefore that's a big part of our business. And so the one of the things we did up front was just to declare, here's what we're going to do and not going to do, and then also just declare to this point of like, here's how AI works with your data. If we're gonna do AI on it, here's the AI models that we use. We're very transparent about that. Here's what we're not going to do. Here's what we guarantee. Here's what we contractually will promise to. And then that way, it's just very black and white for us. We just give our customers and say, please analyze this so that you know exactly what's going to happen. And that was very important for us. And even with that, customers were like, okay, let me spend some time to think about this. Let me go to my committees and rethink my governance and my compliance certifications and so on. But they were worried because when there's so many companies in the world doing this, they didn't want their data to turn into something that would then turn into a training run that then appears in some model of the future. That is a very scary thing for them.
Like the Samsung chip design that happened like a year ago at this point.
Yeah, that thing was not only an interesting, like sort of like philosophical, like this problem can occur, but it was also something that is like very practically, like no enterprise data should ever go into one of these big models, because like nothing that an enterprise has internally is usually considered, available for public consumption. So that challenge is just fundamental. It's a huge difference between a consumer type, like generative AI system and an enterprise type. Even to the point, when like you're trying to figure out if something good is your AI good for your customers, if you for enterprises, we can't ever see what they're asking nor see the results, right? That's not like it's their data, and so that just makes everything harder along the way. So that because you're a little bit blind because everything that the people you're on is very sensitive, and so you have to maintain that level of trust and that level of security. Otherwise, again, enterprises won't be able to use it.
AJ, do you think part of the reason why this adoption has been so accelerated this time around is that there is a B2B and a B2C element playing out at the same time, like cloud, right? Like who not in tech knew about AWS and Azure, etc., when it was starting off, right? Like my mom wasn't talking about it. My mom was talking to me about ChatGPT, though. Do you think that? And then you have all these viral releases. We saw the image model that came out over the weekend from OpenAI and went viral. They had, I think, 1 million people sign on to ChatGPT in the matter of, I think, 24 hours or 48 hours, something like that. So there is like this B2B and B2C thing going on, which means that if you leave work and you're sitting at home with your kids having dinner, AI is still in the conversation. Whereas back then, you went home, sat for dinner, your child wasn't talking to you about hyperscalers. Like, do you think this is a factor?
I think there's been, over the history of software, this has been a business model that a lot of companies have incorporated. If you think about Tableau, when Tableau first came out in the early 2000s or whatever, it became this thing where consumers could use it, and you would come out of a presentation, you had someone had a Tableau presentation, and someone would be like, what is that thing? It looks so much better than my crappy Excel graph chart, and be like, oh, this is a BI tool. Or I don't even know if BI was the coined term at that time. This is what I just used for presentations. And people then started just to like, oh, I'm going to join and just get Tableau. And then eventually what happened was you had the B2B sellers at Tableau going to the director of IT and then holding them hostage and being like, hey, we have your data. There's like 30 people that are using it. You either sign up or don't. Yeah, SolarWinds did this. A lot of companies previously have done this. And I think that it feels at a much, much larger scale, something similar. Like there aren't enough enterprise sellers at OpenAI to keep up with this demand.
PLG, AJ. Like that was more like PLG, where you would use it, but in the context
this is
of
PLG.
work, like Calendly in the context of work. But here, your kids will be using the image model to create an image for a meme that they're going to send on Snapchat.
Yeah.
It's a little bit different. There is a much bigger B2C element.
The craziest thing, Asad, is my daughter's basketball coach, who's a strength and conditioning coach at a local college here. He is every day, I swear to you, every day he texts me because he feels like he has a secret that no one else in his world has. Like that professors or like, well, professors know obviously, but like he says no one knows about this in his world. And he's using it to combine like 20 Excel files together to write like comments on people, their kids.
And you're the tech guy to him? Like,
yeah. So he's like, well, should I get the $200 version or the $20 version? I was like, just get 4.0, you're fine. And he's like, no, I just made the plunge. How do I use deep research? And I was like,
I love this. This is the thing that I love most about this. And Ben, one of the things that's been really fascinating is when this first started happening, it was all about these AI chatbots integrated into products. And they were pretty wishy-washy and blah type of use cases, right? But then it seems like everybody has come to terms with the fact that the real B2B use case is going to be these AI agents. So I'm curious, A, do you believe that? Or do you think there's other such significant implementations that are going to come out or that you see coming out in the near term? A, and B, I can imagine a world when people say you'll have hundreds, maybe thousands of AI agents supporting you all the time, doing all these things for you. All the mundane stuff you used to do will be done for you. I can imagine that world. And I imagine myself enjoying that world. What I can't imagine is like how it would look, how it would feel. Like there's a lot of design choices that people like you now need to make for all of this to kind of work in a seamless, coherent manner. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on how you envision this all playing out. And if you think AI agents are the thing that we will be talking about 3 years from now, or will it be like chatbots and there's something else you see coming?
No, I think AI agents are a big part of where you actually turn the sort of the potential of the AI technology into real value for enterprises. And when I say AI agents, of course, everybody has a slightly different definition. But what I mean by it is an AI that has the ability to execute a little workflow, like kind of in a computer science sense, of like a graph, a directed graph, and then be able to iterate and think about it along the way. And that, I think, is what fundamentally changes everything. Like, you've kind of gone from the world of like an AI assistant who, when you ask it something, it answers within a few seconds, and it's amazingly good. It can do that. But then at some point, you overwhelm it. It can't keep attention on the right things. It doesn't produce the right output. And then, so for years, I think people were like, oh, okay, well, it's not good enough. Like, and then if instead, like you do, kind of like you do with people, you're like, oh, just think about it more, like try again, rethink, like, and then you set up the various like agentic, react or like reflect on what you're doing, and then continue to go down the path of like, of making it better. And then suddenly you realize if you give it time, then you can do more. And then, like, just like people, like if you put these agents working together, they can start to accomplish more. They can talk to each other. They can make like progress in more and more complex tasks. So I believe AI agents, this concept of using them sort of similar to how you would sort of orchestrate a process within a company, this is actually the thing that will power a lot of innovation going forward. And so this is, I think, a foundation that can build upon, as long as you start to solve a few fundamental problems. And so, in one that you mentioned is the idea of the user experience around AI agents. And I don't know if you've heard this term, like AX. There's UI, there's UX, and there's AX now. Like,
this
is
why I love the pod. I learned some stuff with them. Okay, AX.
And the agentic experience overall is actually quite hard, because like even before, you had the sort of the assistant experience, which is not necessarily a normal way that people worked, certainly not before ChatGPT. But then even now, like you start to, like, if you are going to take a long time to do work, how do you get back in, and how does it tell you, how do you work with these agents that are doing stuff for you? And as always, I think ChatGPT is doing a lot of interesting things, in addition to Anthropic, in addition to Gemini and others, where they have started to go down the path of showing you thinking, showing you the reasoning models that kind of do more work for you, that take more time. But this is now, every company that wants to have a good agentic experience overall has to be thinking about these, like, how do I keep customers engaged as in the experience, in addition to the underlying technology that powers it?
Do you think it'll be like one interface, and I'll ask it to do things, and based on that, it'll go do different things, and behind the scenes, there's 50 agents doing those things, but I'm having a conversation through one interface? Or do you think we'll have, like, within each product, like 10 different interfaces, and then across all the products we use like 100? And like, how do you see that come into?
If I was betting on it, I would bet on both. And what that I mean is that, like, sometimes you actually want to have a centralized experience where you say, like, I want to go do this. And that might be a custom thing that your enterprise provides. Maybe it's one of these sort of like major, like ChatGPT to many people is the place they go to go do many different pieces. Now, at the same time, like, I don't know if everybody in the world loves to have a chat interface for everything they do. Like, I remember seeing some of the early chat interfaces around, like, oh, you want to buy something? Here's a chat interface. And you're like, that's not actually how I want to buy something. Like, and so, like, not every interface. There's a lot of really good products in the world, a lot of really good interfaces that are not, me typing into like a chat system. And so, like, for those though, I don't think that they're going to like not do AI. I think they're going to incorporate AI in context. And to me, this is a big deal. Is like, at some point when you're looking at something, you want AI to kind of have that context to give you something, as opposed to you telling that, like, going to some sort of chat interface and being like, I'm going to explain to you what I want. Like, that usually takes a lot of the time compared to doing something in context. So the way I see it is that you have either your enterprise, or you've standardized as like your home life, your personal life around what you do. You standardize around some sort of main place you go, but then you'll see these agents everywhere in the systems. And to your point, they start to cooperate. And so, like, there's an interesting world where we have made a lot of progress in the last few months as an industry around standardizing tool usage from agents. Like, an agent can use a tool to go get data to do actions. And then now there's these emerging agent-to-agent type communications, where it's not just a tool, it's actually the agents talking to each other. And I think this is a big part of our new world, where, like, every company, every system will provide agents that then can cooperate to do work for you.
And how do you think about enterprise value for Box? And my point is, there's stuff that you need to own, and there's code that you need to own, and then there's APIs and model access that maybe you need to license or integrate, and then there's potential supplier or vendor risk if you're overly dependent on OpenAI versus other open source tools or other foundational models through Anthropic. How do you think about like where Box is intended to add value, where it needs to be a proprietary asset or proprietary IP of your enterprise versus something you're comfortable licensing? Like when you're thinking about incorporating LLMs, is it all third party or are you building your own models? How do you think about that?
No, we have two big benefits of Box, I think, and I'm thankful for all the time. One is that we have enterprise data and they trust us with it. So we don't like, one of the challenges with any platform is like going to give it your data, right? Like no matter what, I have this great AI system, and then you're like, I need to go give it your data, and then you're like, well, that's actually itself either a giant pain or it's something that your company will explicitly forbid. So at Box, this is what we do. We keep data, we keep it very secure. It's more secure in Box than it is in other places. This is the thing that we built for so long. And then the other part is that we had made a decision a long time ago that our job is not to build the best AI models. Our job is to use the best AI models to then provide the value that customers want. So we are very open and very transparent about the fact that we use OpenAI, that we use Anthropic, that we use Gemini, that we use the llama-based models. We use many, many different models. Basically, if there's a good model in the world, we want to use it. And then we'll also give our customers the choice to select the ones they want or to bring their own if they so feel like it. And in that case, then we basically said that we're going to participate in all of the benefits across any vendor. And for us, we look at it as like there's no other content vendor who does this because many times they're tied to one model or another. Mm-hmm. So we're able to take advantage of all, no matter who does the innovation. Gemini 2.5 came out recently. It's a really good model. Like, and then in addition to Anthropic 3.7 is a really good model. In addition to GPT 4.5 is a good model, and so on. So like these are we just use them all to accomplish the kind of goals that we want. And we built the architecture such that it's easy for us to switch it out and still have the same experience overall on your content.
Ben, going back to this agent to agent concept, which I think is really interesting, and especially given what you just said on the data security privacy piece of it, do you envision, similar to just API docs, there'll be agent docs that Box would like say, hey, this is how our agent works and this is how it can talk to other agents? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I think that, there's an interesting world whenever you're doing integrations with other vendors. Either we do an integration or an enterprise does an integration. It's often like really painful to make sure that like there's like kind of an N-squared challenge like I've got in different things. They all have to work together. So each of them has to like establish their protocols. But then when you have something like, so tool usage from agents, for those who haven't spent a ton of time with MCP or all context protocol, like the way that it works is like you have essentially like a little description of like what your like in language that what did my APIs do? And then the AI models can look at that and be like, oh, I need to search. Well, it looks like Box has a search. Like I need to get a summary of this document. I need to ask the document question. Oh, looks like Box has an API for that. And then in which case, when it needs that info, then the AI, like a person could be smart enough to be like, oh, I can just do this. I've been told I have a registry of these kind of tools I can use. And so that's very valuable. And then that simplifies the process of integrations and lets people then constantly innovate without having to then go back and change this like all the integrations. And then the interesting benefit is if you say go one step beyond that, not just having your APIs or your tools available, but actually having agent-to-agent communication. And by that, what you mean is like maybe, so for instance, let's say that some customers in Salesforce, and they're like, I'm going to go visit this customer, enterprise company, and they're like, I want to know the latest info. Like, I need to check to see if there's something interesting about this customer. And instead of saying, oh, I know that Box has a presentation or some notes or something else to go look at for that customer, it can just ask the Box agent to be like, is there anything about this customer that I might need to know? And then the Box agent can be like, well, I'm going to then figure out if I'm going to do a search, if I'm going to go look this up and so on. And then it can give that data. So it sort of generalizes one more level, like one level of abstraction higher than just tool usage. And I think this is going to be one of the big things that emerges. And I think very soon in terms of all vendors and all like enterprise connections will be done via these tool usage, but also agent to agent.
It's really interesting. You bring up such an interesting point. I'd heard this like 3 or 4 years ago that Workday was working on, and they probably launched it. We don't use Workday. We're not that level of enterprise. Ability to search across all of the integrated apps. So you could just basically have a search. And if you're looking for anything, say QuotaPath was connected to sales compensation was connected to Workday, you could literally search across QuotaPath and any of the connected apps. Yeah. What you're describing, well, this was pre-AI, but what Ben's kind of describing makes me think of like, if I'm using, because he said use Salesforce as the example, and it's like Box is connected to it. Like, oh, go have the agents talk to Box, figure out what you can from Box as a tool and pull it in to Salesforce and then go across the other 35 applications that I have integrated and pull in the right
I think
data.
the thing over here that's really interesting to me is there is an element of choice of do you want to be a walled garden or not? And so if you're thinking of where can disruption happen and where can't it, one market that people are going after is LinkedIn Recruiter. So just the recruiter product for LinkedIn is about $10 billion a year. And they own the market. There's nothing close in comparison. There's nothing that has any market share that's comparable. It's like they own 80% of the market. Everybody else is fighting over the scraps. And so right now, there are a lot of companies that are like, oh, I can create an AI agent that will go and headhunt on your behalf. And for that, they need to access LinkedIn, because that's where the data sits, right? You can't have a recruitment platform that is proactively recruiting without being able to access LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is usually a walled garden. They will make a choice on, do we allow these people to come and run amok, or do we want to own the market? That is a fundamental choice that many are going to have to make, right, Ben? And if so, what's the decision-making framework here? Like, how do we from outside be able to understand which types of companies are more likely to want to collaborate and allow these things to work with each other, and which ones are going to say, nope, I'm a fortress, you can't access what I do through an AI agent, you can come and pay us and we'll give you some tools?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it, and the question's good, and the way you framed it is like, as an enterprise, you can either bet on one company doing everything for you and taking the best advantage of everything and figuring out all the ways to deal with all the connections, or you say, I'm going to minimize my risk of having that one company not do everything I want by betting on companies that are more open. And for us at Box, this is fundamental to our strategy, is that like, we're not going to prohibit the way that people use the data in Box. It's the customer's data, and we're going to keep it open. So like, we have our own AI, we think is actually the best. We are the best at doing things like extracting structured data from unstructured data. We're the best at looking through corpus of data and getting insights from it, asking questions and having to search through and bring that. And we know best. And of course, we know the permissions best, and we know all the different ways to do that. But we're not going to prevent anybody from saying, I want to use I've bought a third party that's going to go look through your data. Like, that's just kind of allowed. And so we'll survive and we'll thrive if we can do it better than everybody else. And then if there was an alternative company that said, no, I'm going to do everything, I have a really cool AI technology I built myself, or I have a really cool thing and I'm not going to open it, then I think enterprises are smart enough to look at that and say, well, I'm not so sure I want to put my data somewhere that it's inaccessible to not only me internally, like building my own stuff, or to an integration of a third party. Like nobody wants to, like when you have these platforms, you could get locked in, and you don't want that. So therefore, you're always constantly keeping like, what can I do? Is it an open platform or not? And then I think every company like Box, especially companies that hold a significant amount of data for enterprises, they're thinking through this. And at Box, we've decided to be very, we'll succeed as we just provide better value with AI as opposed to locking everything in.
Ben, we're almost at the end of our time together, but we had one question on the prep sheet that Asad put together that I'm really curious on your take on, which is, I'm hearing different things from my friends in the Valley. Some people are saying, hey, technical founders are back in vogue. Not that I can't remember a time when they were not in vogue, but there's like this idea out there that because AI is a natural language interface, that the skill of software engineering and software development is not quite as necessary as it used to be. And that, there's a different kind of creative personality or creative archetype that can flourish and thrive in a world where AI is writing most of the code, is generating most of the infrastructure technically. What's your perspective? Do you think that's true? Do you think that's foolish? Do you think there's still so many potholes within how to implement and deploy AI that we need technical assistance? I mean, it's sort of a big question, but in some ways it's about what is the future of software engineering as a core skill set, given that is your background?
Yeah. I mean, my answer, so I'm a computer scientist at heart, so I'm going to give you the computer science answer, which is, everything you do with a computer is built upon these layers of abstraction, right? So at some under level, there's voltages and code and transistor. Another level is ones and zeros. Another level, there's machine code, and so on and so on. And I think if you look back at the history of programming, like at some point somebody was using punch cards. At some point, people were programming machine code by hand. And then I started my career and my schooling after compilers had become sort of big. But at the time, that was also the thing where oh no, compilers are good. maybe my skills as somebody who's really good at machine code are like less valuable. And then similarly, like these higher level languages came, you don't have to be as good at like C++, memory management, and so on. So like at some point you just see yourself doing higher and higher levels of abstraction. But to me, if you're going to be, if you're somebody who wants to be good at this and invest in it and sort of have this be your career, you need to not only know all the underlying, like how it works, but then also then, like when you have your higher level abstraction, just get good at that level. Get good at like distributed system design. Get good at the understanding that the theoretical like running times of different pieces, so that you know when something goes wrong. Be good at like large scale systems are not just about programming; they're about running things like in an efficient and reliable way. Like none of those are something that is obvious that the AI like tomorrow will come out with like, oh, I'll do that for you. Mm-hmm. And so this is, I think, just a natural progression where we start to use natural language instead of some sort of concocted language to communicate with the computer. And so like I see that like maybe it'll continue to evolve, but the idea that somebody specializes in making computers do work for you in ways that are like standardized is something that will continue to be important for a long time.
What's the most unique, or not unique, but random language that you learned to code in?
So at Berkeley and I think at MIT and others, the first language they teach you when you get in is Scheme. So it's like a Lisp variant, and they do that on purpose, which is like you'll never actually use this in practice. They're going to teach you computer science principles, and so I still remember my Scheme, like Lisp variant, and it was a good lesson. Is to know is like it's about thinking how computers work as opposed to thinking about the language, and then language doesn't matter by most like computer scientists.
I thought you were going to say assembly. How was it?
Yeah, other than that, I mostly that class I put out of my mind. Yeah.
Ben, thanks so much for being our guest today. One last question before you go. Any books you think we should read? Anything you think we should be aware of that's stimulating you, that you think points us in the right direction?
Certainly there are many good books, but I will highlight that like the rate of change of like the world is like so much that like it's almost, I think that like there's going to be a next generation of books that will help. It's similar to what you just suggested, but like for everybody who's listening, like at some point everybody's like, yeah, I know, I've tried AI, I've done that before, like I've been using it, but like there's an interesting like every time one of these new things comes out, be it like a new image model, a new like the new AI model, like it's always good to just go back and try things. So like people say like, what's your advice on the AI? Like for me, it's like make sure that not something that 3 months ago was good at, but something now. And every time there's these like big model shifts, if you're not like aware and try the thing that you tried that didn't work before, like you might actually be missing some sort of major advancement because it's almost like a bold frog effect where everybody's like not realizing how everything is progressing. So I would say like continue down the path of the different models, trying them out to see if how they're evolving. So because only then can you realize like the value that could be bringing to you as a person or your enterprise.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us on Top Line, and thanks to Box for putting you on here. We love it.
Ben, we'll see you on episode 206 apparently. Yeah, every 103rd episode.
You're a regular, exactly. See you in 2 years. Thanks a lot.
Ben. And now a word from our sponsors.
Are you a B2B tech CRO, VP of Sales, or VP of Revenue Operations? Join over 200 of your peers at CRO Summit 2025, a one-day executive-only event designed to help you tackle the challenges of today and position you for growth tomorrow. Hosted at the Denver Art Museum, this summit combines cutting-edge insights and actionable strategies. Learn from industry pioneers covering all aspects of sales and revenue growth into 2026 with sessions from Andrea Kayal of Help Scout, Guy Rubin of Ebsta, Wendy Sturgis of Cleverbridge, and more. Visit joinpavilion.com/CRO-summit to secure your spot today.
Interesting conversation.
Really cool.
Very cool guy. Curious, what stood out to you? What was the most interesting part to you, Sam?
I think the most interesting part, I really liked how they've designed the system from the beginning and from inception. I mean, I was thinking about it almost like Clay, because they're like, well, we can use, and we have the ability to interoperate any foundational model that you need or want. Because I was thinking like, if you're a big enterprise company like Box and you're deploying software into the enterprise, I can imagine a world where you become beholden to OpenAI or you become beholden to Anthropic in a way that feels, in some ways, like companies were beholden to Google for powering their search, for example. Yeah. And so because, you know, there's always these conversations around like, what's the value of the foundational models as, you know, almost like telecom providers in a way, like core infrastructure that you're going to need to deploy AI. And so I thought that it was kind of cool that from the beginning, they've designed the system so that they're not overly dependent on one supplier effectively, and that they can choose between Gemini, between Llama, between, you know, OpenAI,
Such
whatever they need.
fundamental choices that have to be made so
So
long
big
ago,
too.
right?
Indeed. You have, that's why you have to think through these big choices before you embark on a big endeavor. What could possibly go wrong?
Wise words from
Nothing
Samuel.
will go wrong.
AJ, one of the things that I was thinking about as he was talking was, if you look at the stock chart for Microsoft, Apple, either of these companies, these are two of the most valuable organizations in the world, but their path to where they are today wasn't a straight line, right? Like Microsoft for a while had stagnated, right? Like during the Obama era, the stock was flat during his entire tenure if it wasn't down. Apple has had its moments as well. And Bots was also a company for whom growth had stagnated. Ben spoke about how they were in a cash flow optimization type of a mind frame around 2019, 2020. This shift seems to have energized them. Like, this is our moment to now have an inflection point and take off. And they have been very market facing in terms of the narrative, in terms of talking about enterprise AI, et cetera, et cetera. I'm curious how you think that works internally. Like, what happens? Is it like a CEO says, this is the moment, we were waiting for something? They don't lose hope that that something will happen. There will be a moment where we will be able to turn this into growth again. And we just have to wait, be patient, make good fundamental choices that give us optionality. And then they have to recognize and then harness the truth. Is that how it would work?
First off, I'm just thanking God that I didn't say Dropbox during the conversation instead of Box.
That would have been bad.
Really bad.
Very bad.
But actually, to something that Ben said that was really interesting, I didn't realize that Box was so old. 2005.
Maybe old company, yeah.
And that they they adopted the cloud in 2019, 2020. I was like, what? Wait, how are you guys not on the cloud? Well, before that. So, and Aaron Levy's been the CEO since founding the company.
Yeah,
over
I think he was 19.
20 years. That's like a very rare thing for software today.
And everybody for a certain period of time was like, why is he still leading Bots? Like, why doesn't he step down, go do something else?
I think of him still as the 25-year-old kid that walks around barefoot in his office still. Like, that, you remember that in like 2012 or 2013 when they were like having their big moment, inflection point, and he was interviewed. And I think that that's something that like the culture of a company like that has changed many, many times over. Box and Dropbox, for that matter, both had sales offices in Austin, Texas. And I remember walking into the Box office and really feeling like it was an enterprise level solution that they were having. And they were having that moment where everyone was thinking about security and privacy was really big. GDPR in mid 2015, 2016, and like, how does that work? And how do all these security companies, and that like really helped them on a B2B. But then you didn't hear about either Dropbox or Box for quite some time.
Well, Dropbox is a different story, but Bots stagnated completely. Like
so for them to be able to overcome that with their CEO still intact, I don't know what happened on the inside. What's that? You said so no?
Cool. It's like amazing to see this.
So something would have happened where that actually gives you that revitalization and moment in time, like, this is what we've been waiting for to do it. Now, that said, I didn't hear anything that Ben said around what they're doing around AI that I really felt like, okay, they're taking over the world. I don't mean this as we didn't maybe ask him that direct question, but I was just kind of surprised. I'm like, well, this is like a moment in discoverability and how B2B organizations discover internal documents and things that need to be like collaborated on.
Think about all the unstructured
so powerful
data and
it's
all
extremely
the
powerful
that you can now pull.
So the most interesting thing that Ben said is that when they talked about data models and ML is that Box has their own really, really valuable data internally to that no other organization will, none of their other vendors will really have that. Like you think about Salesforce, well, that's one piece of the data set, or I don't know, DocuSign or whatever. But like Box actually has the fundamentals of an organization that like are really, really powerful, right?
Sam.
I think, Asad, to your point, I think that question is quite interesting about surviving. About like there's this basically when we're all running these companies, especially when you have outside investors like me and AJ, and there's this. And we're going through everything that we've talked about over the last 2.5 years on this show, or 2 years, which is the stress, the anxiety, the recession, all of these ups and downs. I don't know if you ever experienced this, and then you talk to somebody that's like outside of your business, but is a loved one or somebody in your circle. And then that person in your circle says, "Oh, I have no doubt you'll be successful." And you,
Thanks,
and
Grandma.
well, sometimes it's grandma, but sometimes it's somebody that actually does know you, and they're
Yeah.
just at a remove, and they're just like, well, these companies are like these hedgehogs, or like there's these mechanisms, and they're looking for alpha, they're looking for enterprise value, and they'll keep going till they run out of cash, which is their energy. And I believe that AJ is, building this system that is pursuing enterprise value, and ultimately will discover it as given enough time. And I remember when I was in the music business, this guy, Paul Marshall, who's a famous lawyer, and he said, you got to stay alive, and you have to not quit, because you don't know when the Beatles are going to walk through your front door the next day. And if you had quit or folded shop, you wouldn't be around for them to walk through the front door. And that's sort of what I was thinking about also when you're asking AJ that question, which is that's why profitability is so important for companies. At least it's especially important if you're in a stall point. There's this constant debate about if you are, I think we talked about it last week or 2 weeks ago, should you go for the gold? Should you burn your last $1 million of capital? You have $1 million left on the balance sheet. Should you burn that $1 million pursuing a fundraising milestone, knowing that if you miss, you're dead, but if you hit the targets, then you may be able to raise the round at the right valuation? Or should you be more moderate and conservative? And maybe it's a function of my demeanor or my temperament, but I think that there's so much important. That's what profitable, efficient growth is all about, which is this idea that we have to be conservative until we find the vein that we can pursue. And that's when we triple down. But the act of tripling down without data and without insight is the thing that can kill you. And the reason death is bad is because it prevents you from being around the next day when there might be an opportunity like AI, some big platform shift that you could take advantage of.
I think there is a patience that I think people need to have if they're going for true greatness. Like you can have like wins along the way, but if you're trying to do something great, it's not going to be easy. There will probably be some stagnation along the way. I run an 18-year-old business. It had its stagnation point, and you have to sometimes re-engineer the business. And to re-engineer a business is really hard. It takes years. You can't be like, next year we'll be different, and then you just write it on a piece of paper and then it happens. You have to change a machine completely. It is very, very difficult. We went through a re-engineering process over the last couple of years, and the thing that enabled us to do it, even though revenue was relatively flat, actually in 2023 revenue was down, but over this period revenue has been relatively flat. But where the revenue comes from is totally different today than what it was even 3 years ago. And so it has been re-engineered. The thing that enabled us to do it was that this business was shooting out a lot of profit. Even in a down market, it was shooting out profit. So you had the ability to make certain decisions and certain moves. If you were running this business at the knife's edge, then there was no way you could have re-engineered it. It would have died. Or it would have just slowly declined. But profitability gives you optionality. And if you're patient, then optionality is great. If you're not patient, then...
Austin,
go ahead, AJ.
I was just saying, Austin, you have talked about great quarters that you've had, and your clients that are hiring, how often does this come up in the conversations in terms of the business model? Not necessarily for you hiring a rep that they need to understand that, but the teams that you're working with are probably very profitable and very efficient as well. are those pieces of the puzzle that you're asking and you're talking to with the clients and understanding how their businesses work?
Yeah, we try to. Like, I think there's two sides of it. Like one part of that question is, because we have clients of all sorts. We have clients that went from 1 to 6 million and raised a bunch of money. I don't know, have a
Sure.
burn rate of 5x and are going to go for gold, right? Like we have those clients too. And we have another client today. It's really funny. There's this list right now on social media. I saw it on LinkedIn this morning of all these AI companies with very few employees for a lot
Right.
of revenue, right? As if it has never been done before. Now, listen, it hasn't been done this quickly and it's very special. I get it. But I have a client that's a 20-year-old German software company that has 200 million in revenue with 175 employees. And this is not like the first time I've met a company of that sort. So it's like, it's kind of hilarious.
What are they? I mean, without saying the company, what are they? Are they a software company?
Software company.
So they have software margins?
They have software margin.
Oh my goodness.
I said, wow,
You're
guys,
making
your
someone
revenue
very
per
happy right
employee is
now.
amazing. They're like, wait till you see our EBITDA per employee. I was a gangster. That's
I
cool.
mean, I think this comes back to what we talk about so much, which is, if you have a long time horizon, if, and this correlates to like if you're doing your life's work, so to speak, but it doesn't have to be your life's work. It just has to be, are you trying to build a real company? And if you're trying to build a real company, it's very, very different than trying to push as hard as you can towards some arbitrary, well, it's not arbitrary, you chose it. So, but, maybe who knows why you chose it, but, hey, we've got to sell the business in 3 years. And I think there's always this push and pull between like urgency and intensity and then quality of life and quality of mental health and stability. But I do think if you can work backwards from, hey, I want this company to be around for a long time. And because exactly to your point, Asad, Pavilion has gone through exactly the same process that you just described. We have re-engineered the whole thing. And it took 3 years. I mean, it's 2025. Yeah. We started the process.
I think that 3 years is the amount of time it actually takes. Like, I think 3 years is the magic number.
I mean, that's my number one lesson from doing this for almost 10 years. Next year is our 10-year anniversary is everything takes twice as long as you think. And so now I think in terms of years and quarters as opposed to weeks and months, and I understand how to sequence things better. But the point is like, man, if we were unprofitable, if everything was dependent on, well, if we don't hit this growth rate, then I won't have the right numbers to present and then we can't raise money. I just feel like that leads to, maybe there's some people that leads to great decision-making and necessity is the mother of invention. But from my perspective, the quality of decision-making improves when you're having fun. And I think fun and profitability are pretty closely correlated.
Sam, I pulled up the financial plan, our first financial plan from March of 2018. That was our first financial plan. And it had us hitting our current revenue target in May of 2020.
I love you, AJ. You're so honest about some wild stuff. I love it.
I saw that and I was like, so you said twice as long. Don't you mean like 6 times as long?
I will say though, I was talking to this other founder that I know quite well, and they were saying, for the longest time that I've known this founder, they were like, we've got to sell by 2027, and we're building this company to flip it. We're building this company to flip it, and the level of stress and anxiety that I got every time I talked to this founder was so massive and so intense. And then the last couple of weeks, this person, I talked to them on the phone, and they were lighter and they were like totally different. And I said, what happened? And they said, maybe we can just build something huge. Maybe we can just build something huge, and maybe we can increase our idea about what we're building as opposed to selling, to a big behemoth. Maybe we can be the big behemoth. Maybe we can build all this functionality and become a platform company like Rippling. And yeah, that's going to take a lot longer, but maybe instead of trying to sell the business for $80 million, we can sell it for 500 million. And who knows, but maybe it's not a flip it in 2027. Maybe we just build this for 10 years. And you could sense the lightness when that person was speaking to me. And I think there's something to that. If you can extend your time horizon and just really fall in love with the work, if it's possible, that's where the fun happens. And I'll tell you, Pavilion is fun now for, it's been fun for a little while, but really like even, March was great, and it's becoming, and I have a line of sight on what we're building over the next 6 months. And who cares? Who cares what the outcome is? I mean, who cares what we sell to whatever transaction? Like right now, it's just really fun putting points on the board and building cool stuff. And I think if you can get into that headspace, that's when the value is created anyway.
There's this thing of like, so actually, this is a fun question. AJ, how long do you think dinosaurs walked the earth?
Versions of this question.
Oh man, I feel like I just talked with my daughters about this. Was it like 100 million years or 500 million years or something ridiculous?
145 million years. Let's say 140.
145.
How long have humans been around?
I don't know, like
10,000 years,
20,000
maybe
years.
100,000. Yeah,
200,000.
200,000.
Surprised we've made it that long.
Like we've been around for like a millisecond in the grand scheme of things, right? And we have this desire to leave a mark, to have a legacy. That's why we care about our last names. That's why we have children and do certain things. We want to leave a mark on this earth. And I think one of the great ways to leave a mark is to build a company that endures, because there are companies that endure well past your own career. And if you can build that thing, that's a cool legacy, right? Like, I find that there's more and more people that are realizing that maybe I just keep doing this, and maybe that'll be the most fun I can actually have. And maybe this thing, some of them are saying, maybe this thing survives even past my career. I think that's a really cool mindset and a cool way to leave a legacy.
What everyone out there doesn't realize right now is that Asad and Sam are just giving me a pep talk after a really tough quarter. Trying to make me feel better.
It's not a really tough quarter. It's
it was
a little bit, like a little bit of miss.
Yeah.
I mean, to your point, Asad, because a couple of years ago, my net worth was dramatically higher than it is today. My liquid net worth, for a lot of different reasons. But when I look at my life now, my life is substantively so much better. And when you're living within your means and you're with people that you care about and you're doing cool things, I was like, I get to go to CMO Summit in Atlanta from Barcelona. And yeah, like I haven't taken a bonus in a couple of years, but I get to fly business, and I get to like host my own conference. And then I get to go to Denver in June for CRO Summit. Like, this is pretty cool. This is pretty damn cool, And anyway, I think to your point, like that's when the value is created anyway. Like if you want an outcome, all the outcomes come when you're not looking for it, and you're just focused on having fun.
It's not by just effort is not achievement, right? Like achievement is achievement. And in the game of building businesses, achievement comes from unique insights and ideas and great execution. But if you are angry and tired and frustrated and like all of those emotions, are you going to have the unique insight that helps you win the market? Like I think some of those insights come from being in a positive mind frame. Like that doesn't mean you're not feeling the competition or having a rough day, but generally your mind frame is one that is conducive to good thoughts, like good ideas coming out of them. And I do know some people whose best ideas come when they are their angriest, but most people I know, their best ideas come when they're feeling good.
And a place of abundance, when you see a crisis and instead of retreating into your reptile brain and your fight or flight, you're like, how can this be an opportunity?
Never let a good crisis go to waste.
Indeed. All right, I'm going to ask a question.
You need a hug.
Okay. After that text exchange with me too, he's like, I didn't fly to Philadelphia. Just
Okay, we are at time.
Yeah, wait, Sam's going to ask a question.
I got a question. You'll like it. Okay.
I like questions.
A book you've read, a podcast you've listened to, like just give us a content recommendation. I know, Asad, you listen to tons of podcasts. AJ, you're always consuming great content. So something in the last week, it has to be in the last week, some idea that stimulated you. Okay.
Don't ask me first. Do not ask me first.
AJ, you are second. Asad, you go first.
I thought the episode on Invest Like the Best with Gil Ranan, I think is his last name. I might be saying it wrong, but He's the guy who started Cyber Starts, I think is the venture firm in Israel that funded Wiz. And he did an episode the week after Wiz's acquisition, and it was amazing. It was probably one of the best episodes of a venture capitalist at the early stage, talking about what it takes to find good companies and help them win. It was genuine. Everyone should listen to it.
That's awesome. Well, you knocked that out of the park. AJ, are you ready?
No.
I
find the name of it.
I'll
Very
give
memorable episode.
two book recommendations. One I just finished and one I just started. So I just finished Mindset, Carol Dweck, about growth mindset versus fixed mindset. Just really good. It's just not, I don't know. I'd heard the phrase growth mindset for a long time, and it's quite misunderstood. And particularly when I've got a baby girl in my apartment and thinking about not saying like, hey, you're smart or you're pretty. My Gabriella said, isn't our daughter beautiful? I said, she has the potential for great beauty if she works at it.
Oh my gosh.
She said, fuck you. And then I'm really excited to read this book, The Art of Learning, by Josh Waitzkin, the guy from Searching for Bobby Fischer, who went from being a chess champion to a Tai Chi champion. And it's really about how do you become expert at different skills. And I'm really excited to dive in. I've heard it's a great book.
Growth Mindset is one of the best books, I think, that have been floating around our ecosystem. And you're right. When I first used to hear people say growth mindset, I was like, what is it? Woo, wow, crap. Like, I was just disregarded it because of the way people were talking about it. Then you read it and you're like, this is fantastic.
Yeah. And it's just a constant reminder not to focus, like, to the point. It's not about the outcome. It's about learning. It's about what can we learn today? How is this experience helpful to us? Aren't we lucky? AJ, give us something.
All right. So the Latent Space, the AI Engineer podcast just had Dharmesh Shah on to talk about AI agents. And I'm halfway through the episode, but it talks about the evolution of AI powered agents and the history of it, which I found really interesting from Dharmesh. And talks about the future of work, hybrid teams, how we're going to work with AI agents, a lot of the concepts and themes that we talked about today, but from the guy who is living in the AI agent world, Dharmesh himself. So check out that episode. It's latent.space is the URL, and promoting another podcast on Topline. Look at that.
That AJ. Awesome. Okay.
All right, folks. Topline 103, 206. We'll have Ben Kus back. But for now, you'll hear from us on Thursday for Topline Spotlight. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Topline. New episodes come out every Sunday. If you like what you heard today, subscribe so you never miss an episode, leave a 5-star review, and share it with your friends. Don't forget to join our Topline Slack channel to connect with us and discuss the topics we cover with other listeners. Click the link in the show notes. Lastly, if you're interested in joining Pavilion, you can learn more about membership at joinpavilion.com/membership. Thanks again for listening.